It was Sir Henry Royce that said almost a century ago that electric mobility is the perfect mode of propulsion for a luxury motor car. And while Rolls-Royce's first EV is taken the form of a large two-door Grand Tourer, BMW has gone the other route, instead electrifying its flagship luxury saloon. This is not a 7 Series, this is the BMW i7. And at over 700,000 ringgit, this is the new BMW Flagship. If you can't tell by the enormous illuminated nose. My name is Aiman Abdullah, this is Malaysian Motoring, this is our review of the 2023 BMW i7 xDrive 60 M Sport. Now, before we get to the elephant snout in the room, we have to first touch on the nitty-gritty parts of this car. So the xDrive 60, as it's available in our market, comes with a 101 kilowatt-hour battery, which powers all four wheels via 2 electric motors, producing a heinous amount of power and torque, which means that this monolith can go from dead to 100 kilometers an hour in under 5 seconds, and on to a top speed of about 185, 190 kilometers an hour. Which means that this is just as powerful as any other BMW with an engine. In terms of charging, the BMW i7 can accept up to 11 kilowatt AC, which means dead to full takes about 11 to 12 hours. Or you can charge this via 200 kilowatt DC, which means 10 to 80% can be completed in about 30-ish minutes. And as a result, this again means that this is a car that you can take over longer distances, which is perfect for a full-size luxury limousine like this. And now, onto the looks. So as you can see, this is the new corporate face for BMW's flagship products. The X7 also has a split headlight design, and now the i7 does too. So up here, you will find the LED daytime running lights replete with crystals in them to make them look a little bit more special. And when you walk up to the car or walk away from the car, there's actually a little lighting sequence where it sort of sparkles in the dark, which looks truly fabulous. You also obviously get the enormous grille, which on the 7 Series does do its job in order to bring more air into the twin turbocharged engine, but in this case it is merely ornamental. And as if to further highlight that, there is actually a strip of LED lights that highlight the kidney grille. And at night, it looks truly imposing. Now down here, you will find full LED headlights. Unfortunately, we've lost the laser light system from the previous generation vehicles, but I can attest that these headlights are still bright nonetheless. We do not have front fog lights. Instead, we have a BMW M front bumper, which is a lot more aggressive, and that's why you can see it has this sort of black mustache that goes all the way around. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this is perhaps the best treatment for the new i7, because if you were to get this as the design pure excellence where you miss out on all of the M Sport bits, this front end looks really ungainly. Now, I used the word monolith earlier because that best describes BMW's new design language for its flagship models. Now, the monolith design is meant to make these cars look like it's hewn from a singular piece, which is why, as you can see, there is really not that much in terms of surface play on the side of this vehicle. And as a result, it means that it does look absolutely enormous, which it is. Speaking of enormity, rolling stock is handled by a set of 20-inch M Sport wheels, which are done mostly in black, but with a little bit of diamond cut finishing, and they are wrapped in Bridgestone Turanza tires. Now, these tires are specially made for EVs. They're Turanza 6s. They have a special compound in them which reduce rolling resistance, improve wet weather performance, and also reduce NVH. Apparently, they are up to 2 decibels quieter than any other tire on the market, which is, a big deal. You also get the M Sport badging here because this is an M Sport car, and that's also why down the side you will find all of the trim done up in high gloss black instead of chrome. If you were to get a 7 Series in design pure excellence form, these are obviously all done in chrome. What I don't like about the side of this car, unfortunately, is the fact that the Hofmeister kink appears to have been fettered with in such a way that it doesn't really look like it's part of the design anymore. And for something as integral to BMW design, I just think this is not that nice. What is nice, however, are the fact that these doors open automatically. With a touch of a button and with the use of sensors down the side, the doors open and close fully automatically. And as you can see, there is also a little animated light carpet down the side in order to not only show you where you're stepping, but also to add a little bit more pizzazz to things. And of course, with the touch of a button, either inside or outside the doors shut again. There's also soft close, obviously. You'd think that back here is where I'd find the least amount of offense, but actually, this is where I think the new i7 kind of lets the ball down a little bit. Because firstly, this tailgate is very empty. And I feel that it would have been better served if the number plate were up here in order to reduce this visual bulk. On top of that, when you look at the rear end dead on, it looks narrow. There is something to do with the lack of surface play down the side which makes this car look a little bit too tall. And overall, it has the same appearance to me as the first generation Nissan Tiana, which is certainly not a good thing. In fact, I actually prefer the previous generation 7 Series a little bit better. I thought that car looked fantastic from the rear, and this one not so much. But BMW does have a history of making rather odd-looking rear ends that grow on you over time, so maybe I'll like this in a few years. Now, of course, you'll find full LED taillights, naturally, with the new LED L that you get on all new BMWs. You get the M Sport bumper down here, which is why you get a lot of high gloss black, but it is cut with a little bit of high gloss chrome in order to make this look a little bit more elegant. Now, behind this tailgate, accessible via a button, you will find an absolutely enormous boot, which is currently full of crap. Now, this is obviously not the largest boot in the segment. In fact, the EQS offers a little bit more in terms of cargo space. However, it is deep enough for you to put at least about 3 golf bags, and there is actually a space underneath the floor for you to put all of your charging cables, which means that this is a very usable space nonetheless. If you're looking for even more space, you're out of luck, because these seats do not fold, which means that this is all the cargo room you've got, so deal with it. But frankly, all is forgiven, because in here, it is absolutely spectacular. So before I get onto the individual bits, I'm going to start talking about the highlights in here. So firstly, there is a new BMW curved display which operates iOS 7, or BMW Intelligent Operating System 7.8, sorry. And as a result, it means that all of the panels in here have all been reworked. The graphics are fantastic. It is sharp. It's very easy to use. Everything falls relatively easily to hand. And of course, if the touchscreen is too far away, you still have your crystalline selector or iDrive controller over here. Now, this panel is a bit that I don't quite like because it's done up in high gloss black, which means that it does show up fingerprints very easily. The same can actually be said of the crystalline elements like the iDrive controller and the gear select and start stop button, because I find myself sort of wiping these clean ever so often. The same goes for the seat controls here on the door, very much like Mercedes-Benz, which are also crystalline, but I'll forgive these because they look really nice. Now, the other thing that I'd like to point out is actually more of that crystalline stuff. So on the front doors and the dash, you will find a strip of cut glass that goes all the way across, and it is illuminated from the rear. This is the most exuberant use of a strange material in a car. I say strange not because it's weird to look at. I say strange because we've never seen this before, and it's a really intelligent use of a design element. So firstly, obviously, you have multicolor ambient lights in here, which you can choose and customize to your heart's content. But more importantly, these panels are actually communicative. So for example, if I just move my phone, if I open the door, you will see that that panel will light up and blink and communicate based on what it's doing. And of course, if I were to open this into traffic, or if there's an obstruction on the other side of the door, it will actually flash red so that I know that it may not open to its fullest extent because there is something in the way. And of course, when you adjust things like the climate control, etc., all of this changes. And if I hit the hazard switch, you will see that everything blinks in red just to ensure that you know what you've done. This should also hopefully prevent Malaysians from driving with the hazard lights on in the rain. Now, aside from that, everything in here is fantastic. You have wood veneer across everything. There's a front panel on top of the dash here. There is some wood down here as well, and it looks fantastic. And of course, if you were to close the cup holders, you can reveal even more wood and a little bit more of this metal stuff, again, to make it look a little bit more upmarket. And where there isn't wood, you will find this lovely merino leather. Now, this is done in a color, the name of which I can't fully remember, but as far as I'm concerned, this is a great color to have this leather in, and it works especially well with this particular dune dust metallic hue that this car is done in, as this is perfect spec if you ask me. And of course, ahead of me sits a thick rim M Sport steering wheel with all the buttons that I need, except for some buttons, which I will get onto a little bit later. And there's even a pedal here, only on the left side, and it's not for your gear, it's for boost. Because for 10 seconds, this car turns into an absolute rocket ship. But boost mode aside, most i7 customers are going to be spending their time in this seat, where you will find a couple of this car's other party tricks. So because all of this takes a little bit of time, I'm going to set one of them off and then start talking to you. So this is the Executive Lounge rear seat package. I believe that's what it's called. I'm probably wrong. Now, the reason why these seats are set up the way they are is so that the person in this seat, opposite from the driver, can have the most relaxing experience possible in the back. So as you can see, the front seat is slowly moving itself away in order to make more room for me. But that's not all, because now the ottoman is rising in order to make me even more comfortable, and when it's done, it will also lower a footrest on the back of the front seat in order to support the bottoms of my feet, in order to make sure that I am ultimately comfortable. Now, of course, I can't actually use that footrest because I'm quite short, but if you're any taller than me, you'll be able to reach it. And this is a fantastic way to travel. It is like business class back here. And I even have a little cushion to support my head, which is nice and soft. And I also have this little screen here in order to control other things, like, for example, to give myself a massage while I talk to you. This is perhaps the most comfortable I've ever been doing a car review. Now, sat back here, these seats are heated, ventilated, and with memory functionality on both sides, which means that you can get very comfortable back here indeed. However, this business class seating setup is only available for this seat. It is not available for the passenger seat. Now, the other trick that this car has is something called theater mode, because if you watch any other content about the i7, you would know that there is a 31-inch 8K television screen right here. Now, in other markets, this screen comes with a built-in Amazon Fire Stick. Now, obviously, that doesn't work in our market, and so here, instead, we get a Mi Stick as standard, which runs 4K. Now, with this Mi Stick, which I can control via the remote, which lives in here, I could watch Netflix, Amazon Prime, YouTube, or whatever really that my heart desires. I can have my Spotify back here. Everything runs very easily. Now, the only annoying thing is that this screen is a touchscreen. But if you have an HDMI input, obviously you can't touch any of this, which means I'm relegated to using the remote control, which makes typing very irritating. The other thing about this is that it requires a hotspot. Now, the BMW i7 is not sold with a SIM card, but it does come with a SIM card reader, which means you can have your own SIM card for the vehicle. So you can use an eSIM or something like that and tether it to an existing data plan that you might have. The only trouble is that I've had lots of connectivity issues with this, because sometimes it will not connect to the hotspot that the car offers, which means connectivity to the Mi Stick is therefore somewhat hampered. But when it does work, it works brilliantly, because I can play YouTube in 4K and watch the best automotive YouTube channel on the market, which is obviously Malaysian Motoring. If you haven't subscribed, do so now and hit the bell to notify every time we make a new upload. And right now it can't connect. But when it does, I can actually watch all of our videos in 4K, which is fantastic. And of course, the audio is played through the excellent surround sound system provided by Bowers & Wilkins, which I think goes up as one of the best, if not the best, in-car audio systems I have ever tried. Now, beyond all of this stuff, you will also find two USB-C ports behind the seats. You will find two more USB-C ports in this armrest. You have a couple of cup holders here, your own wireless charger should you need it, and of course you have aircon vents in the center, you have aircon vents here, and of course I now have air conditioning blowing up my arse. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the best place to sit ever. But this is ultimately a BMW, Which means that once I've folded away all of the things and put away all the goodies, at its core, this should be a fantastic driver's car. And despite all these goodies, is it still really? Now, driving the BMW i7 is a very familiar sort of thing to me because I'm quite a fan of the BMW 7 Series, and this feels very much like a 7 Series. Except when you floor it, it just kind of goes, oh, good God. And that is truly insane. Now, in terms of the driving experience, does it feel like a driver's car? Well, to me, it kind of does. There's a certain degree of connectedness that I'm experiencing from this seat and through the controls that to me sets this apart from other full-size limousines out there, because vehicles like the S-Class and the EQS provide a much more isolated experience, as if to keep you detached and separated from the world around you, which I certainly believe is a good thing for some drivers, but for people like me who like driving their full-size saloons, this is far more in line with my personal preferences. Now, there is very little communication from the steering wheel, but it is at least very accurate to place on the road. Now, the BMW i7 also benefits from having four-wheel steering, which means that in tight scenarios, the rear wheels turn in an opposing direction to the fronts, which reduce the turning circle, and at higher speed, they turn in tandem with the front wheels in order to make the car feel a lot more stable through high-speed maneuvers. And it is very effective in the i7, because this car remains stable at speeds well north of the national speed limit, which means you shouldn't have any issues driving this at all. And in town, although this car is enormous, driving it through tiny car parks and so on is really not as difficult as one might first assume. On top of that, in terms of comfort, the NVH levels in this car are fantastic. Like I mentioned earlier, those Bridgestone Turanza 6 tires are specially made for EVs, and as a result, it means that they are more efficient and, more importantly, quieter. In terms of rolling refinement, there is almost no noise from the wheels or, in fact, from wind at speeds, again, well north of the national speed limit. Now, what you're hearing in the background now, that din, is largely to do with the surface. If the surface of the road is not quite as clear, if it's a little bit more jagged edged, then you will get a little bit more noise into the cabin. But I can attest on the North-South Highway, this car is whisper quiet. Now, when you are on the motorway, you will appreciate the fact that the BMW i7 comes as standard with level 2 semi-autonomy, or level 2 plus semi-autonomy rather. Now, when I say plus, it is actually because this car is capable of not only steering itself and driving itself and so on, but it can also even go as far as to conduct lane changes and so on based on what it sees fit. And it will overtake on the right as need be, it will check to see the lane is clear and so on, and as a result, it does mean that driving this car is truly effortless. Even though the i7 is incredibly heavy, despite that, it doesn't feel like a very heavy car. Between the performance as well as the lightness of the controls, which remain as such no matter what you do to it, even in sport mode, it is still a little bit lighter than what you might expect, but it's not disconcertingly so. It means that the i7's effortlessness is absolutely perfect. This feels like every bit the luxury car that it has to be. And this is something that its primary rival, the Mercedes-Benz EQS, doesn't quite manage with particular acclaim. I say this because the EQS is clearly geared a little bit more towards the tech in the car, and as a result, it does mean that it doesn't quite display the same level of effortless luxury that the i7 seems to absolutely nail. The other thing that the i7 absolutely nails is in terms of the EV Gubbins. So as I mentioned earlier, it charges fast and it provides a good amount of range. Now, this car's full claimed range is about 620 kilometers on a charge. Realistically, you should be able to expect about 550, although if you're driving in town through traffic and stuff like that, 600 is actually achievable. And so that does also mean that if, for example, you are a customer or a user or an owner of a previous generation 7 Series, like the 740 LE, for example, you can move from your plug-in hybrid into this full electric model without really thinking much of it, because the range is adequate enough that it will be very similar in experience to fueling up your petrol car. just that it takes a little bit longer. And of course, if you can charge at the office or at home, then you'll never have to do that at all. So what do I think of the BMW i7? Well, I think that it drives fantastically. I think the experience in the back is great. I've been driven in this car for a couple of hours, and I have to say that the rear seat experience is truly second to none. And overall, the i7 presents itself in a very unique package. We have seen EVs as affordable family cars, we've seen them as SUVs, we've seen them as performance SUVs, and now we're seeing them as full-size luxury saloons. And this i7, compared to other vehicles within this space, does it most convincingly. Compared to the Porsche Taycan, which is easily the more dynamic vehicle, of course, this feels far more luxurious. Compared to the EQS, the i7 seems to have less emphasis on tech and more emphasis on old school luxury. Things like the plushness of the seats, the comfort of using all of the features, and of course the effortlessness of actually using and driving the vehicle. That, like I said, is very old school luxury. And I think that married with the tech that is available in this car makes it a truly appealing package. So much so that I'm willing to overlook the fact that it has an enormous nose and a rather weird bum. Because if I put those things away, this car is just spectacular. And I honestly believe that the only trouble that BMW is going to have with this is trying to do it better for the next generation. But we'll deal with that problem when it comes. And in any case, it's been our review of the 2023 BMW i7 xDrive 60 M Sport. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon to be notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. All the links are in the description below. And if you'd like to learn more about Malaysian motoring and our uploads and content and so on, you can join our WhatsApp channel. The link to that is also in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care, stay safe and jangan bodoh.